With that said, now that I've given you a friendly warning, I will give you a brief rundown of what you can expect after this ritual is completed and what the purpose specifically of this ritual is going to be. So, the first thing it's going to do is that it will cancel any and all contracts, punishments, baptisms, devotions, dedications, etc., 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 that were performed on you, whether you were, incapable of making a free will decision. That is including baptisms when you were a infant. It is including baptisms that were made in previous lives. It is including baptisms that were made under threat of pain, death, and or torture. That is including free will baptisms, dedications, devotions, etc. Whether in this life or in previous lives. It will, however, not be fully effective against Allah or Islam. That said, you are going to be free from Yahweh. You are, at least insofar as his legal rights go, because we will discuss that in a second. But he will no longer have legal rights. His servants, allies, associates, etc., etc., will no longer have legal rights to do anything to or with you. There are no laws that you need to follow anymore. You can work with who and whatever you like. You can do anything you like as you should, as befits a divine soul. You are going to be entirely free. There is no stereotypical satanic imagery involved. There is no need for you to adhere to any and all other things. It does not require you to work with stereotypical demonic lords or whatever, and again, quotation marks, because what defines a demon is relative. So it does not require you to do anything other than just this neutral act of filling in this this contract, or this legally binding document, as I refer to it as. You are going to be free from all of it. It is going to fall off over time. If you copy it almost exactly like I have said here, because I have seen results of it, it will be approved by the powers that be. You will be, insofar as that you don't have any other contracts with any other deities running in the background, which you may or may not be aware of, which you may or may not have made in this and or past lives. But you will at least be free from Yahweh and any and all Christian denominations, as well as Jewish denominations, because, Judaism also related to Yahweh, of course. So, 2 out of 3 Abrahamic religions are targeted 100%. Now, 2. It will, as I mentioned, remove any and all remaining legal influence that Yahweh has over you, even though you may have turned your back on Christianity technically a long time ago. Now, what this means is that if you are someone like a friend of mine, who I have recently performed this ritual on, or with, I should say, because she performed it herself while I presided over it, she was baptized in multiple denominations. It will wipe the entire slate clean. It is just aimed at erasing Christianity and or Judaism from your essence, essentially. There will be beings that are going to assist you to remove any and all links that have been established as a result of this ritual that will work for this. Who they are, you'll have to find out for yourself. I am not going to divulge that. It is, it quite frankly also doesn't even really matter. You owe them nothing. They are just doing their job. A thank you is always appreciated, of course, but, so number 3 is it will begin the process, and keep in mind how I'm phrasing this, it will begin the process of detaching your jailkeeper, aka your guardian angel, because quite frankly, you don't need one. You are a divine immortal soul. You are a god in the flesh, and you have no need of a babysitter. You are a part of the source, you are a part of the divine creator, and if you are a magician, you likely already understand this. So you have every right to dictate who you want to work with. So basically, you are a god, and you don't need anyone to help your hand, to hold your hand. You don't need anybody to help you make decisions for you. Now, I mean, yes, you do make mistakes. Yes, your physical body gets sick, but your soul remains untouched. So that is basically where I'm coming from, all right? And as long as this guardian angel is here, Yahweh servitor. Now, don't get me wrong. There are source angels that did decide to work with Yahweh, so don't trust anything just blindly just because it doesn't happen to be created directly by Yahweh. There are angels who are not out for our benevolence, as you may have already experienced, who are actually angels as I understand them, but again, those are matters of definition, and well, moving on. So, if you need advice, if you can talk to your guides, you can talk to any and all deities, spirits who are there to help you develop yourself. However, the differences between this guardian angel and your guides is that your guides are usually beings, sometimes human beings, sometimes they are angelic, sometimes they are of the lower planes, I don't know, whatever. From other dimensions, hell, alien races, I've heard people say sometimes, who you've met in a previous life, in a previous incarnation, and who have decided to remain in spirit and to assist you, to help you along. These beings are not evil, they're not there to control you, they're not there to tell you what you need to do, they're not there to, make decisions for you. They are simply there as advisors, okay? So, you want a question answered, you think some of your guides know, you approach them, you ask them, you say, hey, mom from, 1200 BC, what do I do with this? Okay. They'll speak up and they'll say, well, this is what I'd do. Okay. And then you ask someone else and they'll give you different advice, or there may be an agreement, I don't know. But that's your guides. They're not there to, fuck you over like this guardian angel is if you happen to drift from Christianity. So, if you need protection, you can call on your specific deities that you like to work with. You can enlist spirits in your service if they want to, if they are so inclined, if they respect you, if they think you are worthy to be worked with and for. There's so many ways that you can go about protecting yourself. You really don't need that guardian angel. It is the concept of it is in and of itself disturbing. I mean, a guardian, it's a guardian in the most legal, right sense of the word. It's like a legal guardian that we currently understand in our judicial parenting system, where a legal guardian presides over someone and makes decisions for them in terms of how they spend their money and, how they're raised and stuff like that. It's a guardian in that sense. It's not necessarily a protector. If you want protective spirits, you can go conjure yourself some protective spirits. My personal advice, please respect free will. Don't bind people to you that don't actually want to, work with and for you. Because that's, in my personal opinion, not a very smart thing to do, and they would not appreciate it, nor would I. But, that, because that's, in essence, doing what Yahweh does. So, if you really feel the need to work with angelic beings, if you like the thought of angels, as I mentioned throughout this video, there's plenty of them out there who are eager to work with you, likely, who really couldn't be bothered to dictate your life to you. Okay, so, however, with that said, and here is the caveat to point number 3. Your guardian angel will not go immediately. And I would not advise you to immediately try to kick him, her, it out. Why? Because some of you, like I had, have a guardian angel that's a little further up the hierarchy. Like I said, mine was an archangel, which is a little unusual for people to have that. But like I said, gotten a little further up the Christian hierarchy than most people in past lives. If you try this, if you try to kick them out, okay, if you try to kick this guardian angel out right away, and you are not strong enough, you don't have the proper help, risks are potentially lethal. Worse than lethal, if you're very unlucky or very weak. So, and I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be a dick. But if you try to kick out this guardian angel, and they happen to be of decent competence in what they do, you are a relatively inexperienced magician, you don't have the necessary development, you don't have the necessary allies, you don't have the necessary precautions, magics, etc., etc. That's going to, quite frankly, be dangerous for you, and you risks, including but not limited to death and or possession by them. So that is not something I would advise and or recommend. But because I want to add this as a little bit of a disclaimer so as to avoid any and all errors and consequences here. What I advise you is that once you do this, once you perform this ritual, they will technically no longer have legal rights to do anything to you, okay? However, the attachment is still there. What you are going to do, and this is where your willpower comes in, is you are going to ignore any and all things that this entity, spirit, whatever, whispers into your skull. All right? You are going to ignore it, and you are going to be tough. You are going to... Maybe you won't even notice anything. Who knows? It depends on how powerful the being is that is attached to you. You are going to ignore it. You are going to keep up a regular schedule of meditation. You are going to do things that are positive to you. You are going to engage in things that are going to help you, that amuse you. I don't know, watch a funny movie. Go, go to the beach with your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. I don't know. Do nice things. Do happy things. Do stuff that's, uplifting to you. Play with your kids. I don't know. Go see the movies with your friends. Go do fun things that are going to mentally empower you. If you're like me, you love engaging in the metaphysical, you do it as a hobby that's basically turned a job almost, and you just do that. And you are going to strengthen yourself. You are going to bolster your mind. You are going to bolster your resolve. You're going to keep doing these things. You're going to ignore its Christian propaganda that it will undoubtedly try to force in your head. And this will be much more easy if you are someone who has not recently decided that they no longer want to be a Christian, because that subconscious programming has already been ripped from you, piece by piece. However, if you are newly no longer a Christian, if you are newly a filthy heretic and blasphemer like I am, then, and I use those terms ironically, I do not consider myself a blasphemer or a heretic. That only applies to Yahweh, and I don't think that Yahweh is anybody who can claim that he's being blasphemed against, or that he's a heretic, or that I'm a heretic or something, because quite frankly I think I'm in the right and he's not, because... well, look at all the stuff he supposedly says he's doing. So, I would advise you to do these things. Take it slow. And in the words of that witch that I talked about earlier, who also happens to have a store here, they'll fall off over time. because I discussed this with her, and she, I mean, she's up there in age. She's seen a lot. She's been in the metaphysical for decades, and she has experience with Christian stuff, and they will fall off over time. Now, there are things that you can do and probably should do, which is strip yourself of subconscious Christian beliefs. For example, if you are the kind to have been part of a religious denomination of Christianity that says that you can't have sex before marriage, go out and have sex with your girlfriend. Don't feel bad about it. If you're into BDSM, I don't know, go get whipped. Whatever. I don't care. Do things that you have, that you find pleasurable. Do things that you have fun in. Do them without, escalating into addiction or any other sort of extremity. But do them and indulge in the fun, happy things that you have suppressed in yourself so long, But I'm talking about the natural things, the things that are actually you, not stuff that is coming out in a, weird, fucked up way because your mind has been so screwed up from holding it all inside, because that is a possibility. I have dealt with addiction myself as a result of the Christian repression, so I know firsthand what that's like. So that's why I'm advising you to, let loose, but don't go overboard. And these things may seem so simple and so stupid, maybe even to say to some of you, but really what you're doing is you're grounding yourself, all right? Because a lot of these beings, they are going to try to fuck with your vibration in the sense that they are going to try to shoot it up. They're going to try to keep you very ungrounded, because a lot of their vibration is very unpleasant, very unnatural, high-pitched, high vibration. Especially if you're clairaudient, you're going to have some unpleasant things. You're going to hear ringing in your ears, or you're going to hear very annoying voices. You're going to hear, well, I say you're going to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But these are manifestations that you're going to be having. I've had people who have been attacked in dreams, where they have been waking up with weird shit all across their arms. And if you're a Christian and you're watching this, you're going, oh, see, you've given yourself over to demons. No. See, I'm coming at this from the perspective that Yahweh is the demon, all right? And his workers, those that work for him, they are the ones who are doing this stuff to keep you inside of their little trap. Because, and this is actually quite easily noticeable because there are so many contradictions in the Bible. For example, just to name just one, there's a passage in the Bible which says that the Lord hates those who love violence. But then in Exodus it says that the Lord is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. If you are a man of war, if you are a warrior, if you like, then you have to like violence. That it is that simple. Otherwise you would not be a man of war. All right? There is a part of you that likes violence if you are a man of war. The end. Those are the little things that just don't make sense. And I'm thinking, if you're an almighty, all-powerful God, you would know that in your own holy word. That, Anyway. So, these are the things I would recommend. If you are the scholarly type, I would actually recommend that, maybe even before you carry out this ritual, that you deprogram yourself from your Christian mindset. Because you see, most of these spirits or entities that work for Yahweh, they gain strength because you believe in their doctrine. I mean, a spirit does not have set strength. Why are beings gods? It is because they are recognized as gods. It is because people worship them. It is because people pray to them. So, if you start taking away their power, if you look at this guardian angel and look at it as, you're an oppressor, you're a jailkeeper, you're keeping me back, and you have to go, you take away their power. They will drop rapidly in their influence in your life and over you. That means that the attachment that they have to you is going to fade, and eventually they will leave you. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So, once you have done that, once you feel that you are deprogrammed enough, and again, you can do this afterwards, but you need to at least have gotten to the point where you're saying, I want to make this final step and I want to denounce Christianity. You shouldn't do this at a whim. This is not a ritual that I have designed for those that are just not that sure about what they're doing. Okay. I've talked about this stuff relatively briefly in the, past 2 hours or so. But I have taken years upon years, decades, in fact, to come to this conclusion, all right? To reach this point in my life where I said, Christianity is evil. I used to believe Yahweh was the Almighty God, okay? It takes a while for you to completely rid yourself of such programming. I would know, I went through it. And I was a pretty devout believer because I've always been a very spiritual person, all right? But there is no greater enemy to those beings than someone like me, because I was so devout, because I sacrificed my life to it, because I devoted my life to it. And to then find out all this stuff, it is a process. It takes years, maybe lifetimes for some of you. But eventually you're going to reach a point where you're like, this is not how it's supposed to be. This is unfair. This is unjust. I did nothing to deserve this. And if I did a slight thing to deserve some punishment, karma likely already dealt that out 400 or 500 years ago. And not still carrying it out. Because that's not what karma is. That's not how it works. So, step 4, or point 4, I should say. This contract that I have designed for you, or this legally binding document, I should say, it is phrased in such a way that it covers as much legal ground as possible from a spiritual perspective, so that there are little to no caveats and or workarounds for most people's contracts that Yahweh could use. All right, because pretty much all punishments that Yahweh gives to people are based on the fact that He is your God and you are under His law. All right. So Yahweh does not have a single drop of influence in your life unless you let Him. All right. If you somehow, somewhere still believe that He is thy God, then you are not going to be free entirely. Okay? So, if you have stripped yourself of that influence and you submit this stuff, you are free. The end. Okay? But you have to be sure that you want to do this. However, legally and technically, once you submit this document, because make no mistake, it's binding, and I would actually recommend that you prick a little thing in your finger, or if you want, you could actually make a cut. And I would not recommend that, by the way, for people who have issues or have had issues with auto-mutilation or something like that. I don't want you to send yourself back into into a relapse on that. But if you don't have problems with that, you can draw some blood from yourself through whatever means, and you are to put this at the very end of this contract, or at the end of this document, I should say. It's not a contract. I need to stop saying that. At the end of this document, right next to your signature, all right, or on your signature, that will provide further power to it. However, if you have made special dedications to, I don't know, a certain saint, like Mary or whatever, or a saint something something of something something, you are going to have to include a special clause in this particular document to denounce that particular individual. Or you can state a generic thing such as, I am no longer dedicated to any and all saints, blah blah blah, related to blah 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 blah. I have not included this in the basic standard ritual and document. So, if that is the case, you might want to do some past life exploration or something, or you can just submit the document and deal with it when it comes up, if it ever comes up. All right. The point is, you want to try to, if you know something like that, you want to try to insert this into this document, and you're going to strip yourself of as much influence as possible. Point number 5. The spiritual contracts, the punishments and such, will likely remain in existence until they are read. This was the case with me. There was a extra contract that Yahweh had also extended to me as punishment for something else I had done. Yahweh, this was in the same life, by the way, so in the 1500s, but Yahweh saw fit to extend his second contract in that same life. It was very much related to the same thing that I had already received a contract for, but that is the pettiness of Yahweh, and one of the reasons why I was like, this is pathetic, and this is quite clearly meant to lock someone down, to lock them out of their joy and happiness in life, because it literally was part of the same contract. Oh, you made contracts with two different beings, because I had to sign a contract separately with the familiar of Agarus, as well as with Agarus himself. I got a contract for Agarus himself, and I got a contract for the familiar. Because in his mind, in Yahweh's mind, I made contracts with two separate demons. So I was punished twice for one act. And yeah, if you want to get real technical, there were two acts, but contract B was part of contract A. It was literally written like that. If you want this to be the deal, then you have to also write a contract with my familiar here that I'm given to you, so that we can truly set up contract A. Because you're asking for something, this guy can teach you that, I'll place him with you, and then we can talk about the rest. That was how that went. But Yahweh saw fit to extend 2 contracts of punishment to me for that. But these contracts, they will remain in existence even after you submit it, for you to read. Apparently this is done so that you can read them, so that you can know what everything was about and what it said. It is sort of a, you need to at one point or another acknowledge that they're there. Their effect, their power, their energy is gone. They will no longer have influence over your life. But they will remain in existence, so if you stumble across this document later on, yeah, that's why. So if you ever start reading, astral copies of your contracts, and you come across a Yahweh scroll while you have performed this ritual 5 years ago, that's why. Point number 6. This contract, it will force you to strip, or this document, excuse me. This document will force you to strip your fear and conditioning from your mind. You will not be able to complete this ritual to its entirety if you are not fully convinced that you want to do this. And if you're a believing Christian, why would you want to? You wouldn't want to go against your God, right? So, point number 7. What this also will do, and this is an occurrence that I have sometimes witnessed, it's actually been the case with myself, with 2 of my friends, where improper attachments, as I call them. These are beings that, I suppose I should give you guys some background. It will force out improper attachments, so keep that in mind when I'm telling you the story. I had a spiritual teacher for a while. She said I had a demon attached to me. Now, at the time, I had just come out of Christianity, alright? And there were 4 of my guides. One of them was ironically an angel, not of Yahweh, a source angel. It is an angel, and 3 other of my guides. They were kicked out, alright? They left, and they fled, not because they couldn't stand up against, her, but because in essence I consented to agree to this ritual. And of course, I was also deceived, because I was just freshly out of Christianity. I was a complete novice with all this stuff, and I trusted her. So she kicked out these guides, and this same woman did the same thing to a good friend of mine, and she too lost some of her guides. And in so doing, she kicked out part of a connection to a past life gift that she had, the gift of necromancy, which is more of a practice, but she has always had this special death connection. I would call her a legit medium, speaking to dead people. Now, ironically, this woman that performed these rituals called herself a shaman. But what I did not know at the time is that apparently she works for Yahweh. I don't know exactly how that works, because Yahweh is supposed to not approve of these practices. So maybe she thinks she's doing the right thing. Maybe she's knowingly doing what she's doing. She did this to both her and myself, and we eventually, years later, started talking about this, and we went like, hey, you've had this done too. So what had happened is that after she did this, and I found it quite strange that a shaman would use the Bible in her rituals, because she did. And angels, Yahweh angels, were with us after that. I was told that I had 3 guardian angels. All of them archangels. Unusual. And as it turned out, those 2 archangels had replaced my 4 guides. So that is because I technically didn't really consent to that, but I did consent to the ritual and the removal. My guides were forced to flee, were forced to leave. But the 2 other angels were never properly attached to me, because they were technically not supposed to be there. So that is what is called an improper attachment. And this is something that sometimes will happen. I have to question if a lot of the time an exorcism, as the Catholic Church executes them, will have the same effect. Because the spirit world runs on contracts. And an exorcism doesn't take into account spiritual contracts. It's not true spiritual healing. It is basically Yahweh forcing out something that has legal rights, no matter how fucked up it may be, no matter how angry and malicious it may seem to you, and maybe even is, perhaps likely even is, because if it comes to the point where an exorcism is required, it likely has evil intent. I am absolutely not denying that. I have very frequently dealt with beings like that. It is part of my job, after all. But I have dealt with those so-called beings, those demons, as the church calls them. and they have legal rights to be there. I can tell you that. Someone, somewhere, somehow has done something to give that demon permission on a spiritual level. But Yahweh is breaking that permission, because he doesn't care. As should already be obvious to you, Yahweh works the system, because that's what Yahweh does by baptizing infants. That's what Yahweh does by pointing swords and guns at people's throats and heads, and by forcing them to get baptized, and forcing a contract upon them in such a manner. So, because most people nowadays in the Western world are indoctrinated, and they think to themselves, Christianity, angels good, demons, negative spirits, Satan bad. Therefore, malicious spirit, no matter what kind of malicious spirit it may be, therefore go to church, get Jesus help. Which I don't blame them for. I'm not trying to ridicule any Christians, because I know that a lot of the time for the people, it's what they're used to, it's what they know. And I also want you to know I don't have anything against most regular Christians. However, I do question their integrity and lack of research. I do question their willingness to engage with things that are outside of their comfort zone, that they may not want to hear because it would turn their worldview upside down, as it did mine. But I loved every second of it. Exorcisms are another example, and technically what this shaman did. By the way, I believe she is a shaman, but I'm kind of wondering what she's doing, and if she even knew what she was doing herself at the time. These beings that were cast out were, in my case, not evil, nor were they cast out because of any sort of evil intent or any evil acts that they had done to my friend. It was, in fact, these supposed angels that were wreaking havoc in our lives to get us to return to Yahweh. It is literally on those contracts that they were supposed to do that. But most people obviously don't know that, because most people who are Christians don't use their third eye, and so on and so forth. Because they can't. Or not properly anyway. And I don't deny that there are people who call themselves Christians who are mediums, or, spirit workers who engage with Christianity. But I do think that in the cases of those people, that they are very much regulated in what they're allowed to see. Because the third eye, it isn't some sort of mystical thing that floats up there and that can't be touched like the soul is. The third eye is a muscle. The pineal gland. I use the term muscle figuratively. The pineal gland is often said to be the third eye. But when I say that the third eye is a muscle, I mean that, like I said, figuratively. I mean that in the context of it needs to be worked out, like you would, do a barbell curl for your biceps, or French press for your triceps, or something like that, or a military press for your shoulders. You have to use your third eye to develop it, is my point. So that also means that if the third eye picks up energy, if it translates energy, in other words, if it translates it into images in your head, because that's what your third eye usually does, unless you're, clairvoyant and you actually physically see things. Which, by the way, everybody has the capability of doing all these things. It's just that some of us are more gifted towards one part of that, whereas others are more gifted towards another gift, which they can develop. So, my point is, if the third eye picks up energy, and you have a guardian angel attached to you that is actively working against you to keep things enshrouded, even if you call yourself a medium and you call yourself a Christian, and you can actually see dead people supposedly, and you can actually see all these wonderful, benevolent angels, and you see all these evil, horrible demons, are you really seeing that? Or is that thing on your back, the thing lodged in your zeal chakra, the mouth of God, strange name, yeah? Is that really influencing it? Is that being that is likely at that point in time more spiritually powerful than you are, is that being not capable of influencing what you're seeing? Think on it. So, that was the point about improper attachments. Little sidetrack there, but felt I needed to clarify my viewpoint and experiences, again, from what I've seen in other people and in myself, regarding improper attachments and how that relates to everything. So, point number 8, and this is a very important one. It's technically the last point. It will piss off Yahweh. Be very careful with that. Because Yahweh does have a lot of power. A lot of people think that because, he's not God Almighty, I can go about my merry way. By making this video, I am an enemy of Yahweh. Others here on YouTube who dabble in different streams of magical energy are also enemies of Yahweh, because they have also called him out on his bullshit. But you need to ask yourself if you are ready for that. So, I would advise you, since you are here on my channel, which likely means that you are interested in the metaphysical, which likely means that you are at the very least a dabbler in the magical arts, that you take measures before you actually conduct this ritual to protect yourself. You should probably consult with your deities of choice. You should probably ask them to help you through this transition. You should probably talk to your guides. You should probably talk to your ancestors. You should probably start working on your magical protection. And you should probably, if you haven't already done so, befriend some powerful spirits or another who can help you defend yourself. Because I have noticed this with some people who are not that well protected, although those whom I have personally helped, I have first made sure of that they were properly protected and prepared, that they get completely fucked over after this, because Yahweh's pissed off at you. Because he loses a follower, that means that he gets less food, he gets less energy. He doesn't like that. And likely, if you come to the point where you do something like this, you have likely come to that conclusion because you have thoroughly renounced and denounced Yahweh in your heart and in your mind. And you will likely go on to tell other people about it, even if it's just your co-workers, or if it's just your friends, or if you go online on a forum or whatever, or you're doing like what I'm doing now. You're recording a video, and you're risking, no matter how many people may disagree with you, and you're risking no matter how many people may start, accusing you of being a filthy heretic or a blasphemer. And hey, if I'm a blasphemer and it concerns Yahweh, yeah, probably true. I don't care. But you want to avoid certain repercussions. It's like, I mean, if you're living in Arkansas or Missouri or places like that, you may want to keep this kind of stuff a little bit on the down low, as you probably already are doing. But expect that if you live in a place like that, where the Christian population is heavy and where the populace is rather fanatical, then you may want to be a little careful, and you may want to upgrade your spiritual protections and insurances. So that is my last big warning to you before I decide to give you this ritual. Lastly, point number 8.59. Yes, you can slightly edit the wording if for some reason you are a little uncomfortable with the way I have phrased things. That's fine, I don't give a fuck. However, make sure to keep the legal stuff intact. That's my final word. I am done recording the prelude now, the 2.5 hour long prelude, roughly, on why I am uploading this video. I am going, for the sake of those of you watching who want to immediately get to the heart of the matter and who don't want to listen to my banter or the reasoning or stuff like that, I am going to record the requirements for the ritual and the exact wordings that you need to use in a separate video, so as to cut down A, on the length of this one, and B, so as to make it more accessible to any and all of you. So I will see you in the next video. Hail.